Okay, so to begin with, we've got a microphone on a guitar amp, and that microphone is being plugged into channel 1 of the stage box. Now that we've got sound playing out of our speakers, we want to look at how to get sound from a microphone into the desk and then into Pro Tools so that we can listen to it back in the studio. And first of all, we're going to be using a solo function on the desk. So before we do anything, we just want to come over to our master section, which is this strip here. And we just want to make sure that this control that says solo master up towards the top is pointing at about 3 o'clock. Because of the way the studio is set up, when we plug into the mic input on the stage box in the live room, that will appear at the mic input at the corresponding channel, so channel 1 in this case. It does go via the patch bay, so if we wanted to change that, we could, but if we don't want to change it, it will just end up here. By not pressing in the line switch this time, that leaves it in mic as default. We have a mic input coming in, and as such, we don't know exactly what the level is going to be, so we're going to use the preamp to set that level. Now, the way to check it, we're going to press this switch here, which says solo, which engages the desk's solo function. We know that it's engaged because there's a red light now flashing over by the solo master. The type of solo that it is an AFL or an after fade listen. Because of this, we're going to need to raise the fader up to 0 so we can monitor it correctly. And then we're going to go up to the input gain, and we're going to raise this up while we watch the levels on the main meters. We're going to aim towards just under 0 on this console, and we can then take it back out of the solo bus. Once the signal's coming into the desk and we're at that point, if we've still got our output set up as we went through in the other video, if we now assign this channel an output, such as left and right, that will then go to the speakers via that blue fader. We want to send it to Pro Tools, so I'm not going to give it an output from the desk right now. To send the signal into Pro Tools, we're going to use the direct outputs of the desk. These are connected to this right-hand side of the patch bay that says direct outputs. By putting my Bantam jack into direct output 1, I can then take that signal and put it into Pro Tools input 1 and receive that via the Focusrite into Pro Tools. In Pro Tools, I've got an audio channel, and on its input and output assignment, I've got input 1 assigned, which is input 1 on that Focusrite. And then, same as on the other video, our output is assigned to 1 and 2, so that will go to those 2 channels that we set up on the desk. To see the signal coming into Pro Tools, we're just going to hit Input Monitor, and we'll then see that signal come in. When I raise this fader up, that goes out of Pro Tools Master Fader through the signal path that we set up in the previous video. If we want to record in Pro Tools, we use Record Enable rather than Input Monitor. Another method that we can use rather than the direct outputs is much in the same way that we can send the signal to an output such as our speakers. We can also route them to other outputs which we can then feed into Pro Tools. So I'm going to select 1 and 2, and then whereas with left and right we would use the pan pot to select between left and right, when we've got 1 and 2 selected, left becomes 1, right becomes 2. So I'm just going to leave that over at left. Once we've made that routing selection, rather than coming over to this blue fader, it's going to come over to this red fader. If we'd left it central, it would come to both of them. However, we've panned it over to the left. So when I raise that up to 0, we'll see that the signal is now at that output, which is currently not going anywhere. To send that signal into Pro Tools, we're going to do it much the same way that we did the direct output. Just instead of going from direct output 1, we're going to go from the group output on the desk, which is on the same side of the patch bay, and we'll go group output 1, and then we'll instead put that into Pro Tools input 1. And that will then send that signal into Pro Tools in the same way. The benefit of doing this is that you could route multiple things to that group output.